Welcome to the MYOB Advanced 2021.1.1 release. I'm Bronwyn from the Professional Services team. In this webinar, I will be taking you through the main feature enhancements in the area of finance. Taking a look at the agenda for today's webinar, the visibility of each supplier account can be associated with a branch or company in the same way you can already do this for customers. Company Groups functionality allows multiple related companies to access the same set of customer and supplier records. Financial dashboards are now included in MYOB Advanced for use by the AR and AP clerks and financial controller. We'll take a look at how MYOB Advanced can handle fixed assets under construction. Finance screens that used automation steps have been redesigned to support the new workflow engine. Users can now add cash transactions and customer payments to a bank deposit. A tax calculation mode setting has been added to the sales prices and sales price worksheet screens to support price lists for net and gross prices, plus multiple other improvements that have been made to user interface and financial management processes. As you can see, we have quite a bit to cover, so let's get started. From MYOB Advanced 2020.6, users could limit the usage of a customer record to a selected branch or company. Similar functionality has been implemented for suppliers in this release. The visibility of each supplier account can be associated with a branch, company, or company group to restrict visibility by access role. The configuration steps for this functionality: on the Enable Disable screen, select Customer and Supplier Visibility Restriction. If the visibility of the supplier is restricted to a branch, the supplier can be accessed by users assigned to the access role specified for the branch under the Configuration Settings section on the branch's screen, or alternatively by the access role on the Company Details tab of the company's screen, which applies for all branches of the company. Changes to the Supplier Classes screen: on the General Settings tab, a Restrict Visibility To field has been added to the default general settings. Any branch or company selected here will be used as the default when setting up suppliers of the class. Changes to this setting applies to newly created suppliers that are based on this class and existing suppliers that are reassigned to the class. Changes to the Suppliers screen: on the Financials tab, a Restrict Visibility To field has been added to the Financial Settings section. Any company or branch selected works with the supplier exclusively. When branch is selected, the branch is copied to the Purchase Settings tab default branch field. When company is selected, the system restricts values for selection to the branches of the selected company. When selected, a user can only select suppliers visible in the branches the user has access to. Classes available in the Supplier Class field are restricted based on the roles assigned to the current user and the branch company visibility restriction. Multiple screens and reports have been changed to limit visibility to supplier records based on the Restrict Visibility To setting. And just a note, any restriction groups configured in the system are applied in addition to the supplier visibility restriction. Let's look at how to restrict visibility of supplier records to different company branches. In Advanced, you can have multiple companies and branches within a tenant. There may be times where you want to restrict access to a specific company or branch within a company. This demonstration illustrates how you can restrict supplier access based on a branch, in the same way you can do for customers. If we go into a supplier, on the Financials tab, there is an option to restrict visibility. If we look at the options available for selection, I can see company groups, individual companies, and their branches. By selecting to restrict to a branch, other branches cannot see that supplier. I'm going to restrict visibility to Rapid Bite Melbourne branch. While we're here, I will also set a visibility restriction on Supplier 2. This time I'm going to restrict visibility to Rapid Bite Sydney branch. Just looking at the supplier classes, the setting also exists at that level. So if I were to restrict visibility at the supplier class level, Any supplier I create using that class will automatically inherit the restrict visibility setting. Let's now look at our users. If I look up user Irene Brown, I can see that she's assigned access to AP functions and is permitted to view transactions for the Sydney branch, but not the Melbourne branch. I will log in as Irene. If I go to create a bill, we can see that Supplier 2 is available for selection, but Supplier 1 is not visible. This is because of a visibility restriction. You might notice that also missing in her list of available suppliers are suppliers 4 and 5. If we go back to supplier profiles and take a look at those two suppliers, you can see that both 4 and 5 are restricted to Rapid Bite Melbourne branch. Company groups allow for multiple related companies to share or access the same set of customer and supplier records. This provides greater control over who can see transactional information for customers and suppliers. Configuration for company groups. On the Enable Disable screen, to access the company group's functionality, select the Customer and Supplier Visibility Restriction option under Advanced Financials. Once activated, this provides access to a company groups screen on the quick menu of the configuration workspace. Next, create your company groups. The company segment key determines the length and type of group ID code you can use. This needs to be unique from any other business account record identifier, such as supplier, customer, employee, or company. A currency ID field displays if multi-currency accounting is enabled. This specifies the base currency of the current tenant and is read-only. Companies can be assigned during group creation, or alternately, from within a new Company Groups tab on the Company screen. Finally, you need to assign these to your customers and or suppliers. So let's take a look at Company Groups in action. In Advanced, each tenant can contain multiple companies and branches. This multi-company structure provides a lot of flexibility, allowing for sharing of customers and suppliers or other master records. However, there may be times when not all companies require access to those records. By setting up company groups and assigning these to customers and or suppliers, you can limit access in a similar manner to the customer and supplier visibility restriction by company or branch. If we look at our companies drop list, you can see that this tenant has 3 companies listed. If you go to company groups, I have a production companies group, and 2 of these companies, Rapid Bite Headquarters and Rapid Bite Regional Offices, are assigned to this. I'm going to open up the suppliers screen and assign this company group to Supplier 6. Now if I go to the company drop list and change to the view of the franchise company, when I open my bills and adjustments, and in my supplier drop list I can no longer see Supplier 6. So this is due to the company group restriction on that supplier. And this works the same way for customers. From 2021.1.1, financial dashboards have been included in standard MYOB Advanced. These have been made available for the AR Clerk, AP Clerk and the Financial Controller. Using the AR Clerk dashboard as an example, if we access the dashboard properties via Dashboard Designer, you can see that access has already been granted to the AR Clerk role, and Make Visible on UI is already selected. You can set which workspace this area displays in. This one shows in the Dashboards workspace. Allow users to personalize is also selected, meaning users assigned to this dashboard can copy the dashboard and modify its settings according to their own needs. What is visible on the dashboard depends on access and license settings for the user and the role. For those that have access to Desktop Designer, you can view, edit or delete existing widgets or add additional ones and truly tailor the desktop to meet your needs. To have the desktop default on the user's home page, assign this on the user's Personal Settings tab. So let's take a look at the financial dashboards. The financial dashboards include a range of analysis tools such as KPIs, metrics and charts. Data is gathered using generic inquiries. So if we take a look at the AR Clark dashboard, this is one that could be used by sales departments such as salespeople, advisors, the account manager or customer or services manager or sales manager. And for example, information such as customers on hold credit or age balances and invoices to be printed displays there. If we look at AP Clark, this is a dashboard that could be used by employees and managers performing supplier management activities. You can view all overdue accounts payables, monitor the supplier purchasing trends, look at total AP balances over time. The controller dashboard is for the finance department. This links to the AR and AP dashboards. And key financial information such as customer and supplier balances, overdue accounts, payments to approve and aging information, etc. is contained on there. And as I mentioned before, if you do have Desktop Designer, you can add that information. Next we move to fixed assets under construction. From 2021.1.1 you can now record fixed assets that are under construction. This gives greater visibility of assets that are not yet in service, allowing you to accumulate the costs related to these under construction assets and record them in dedicated asset accounts. Once construction is complete, it's then just a simple step to place the asset into service and start depreciating this. For the configuration on the Fixed Assets Classes screen, you'll need to create a new class or classes to assign to any assets under construction. You would create one for each type of asset you want to hold as under construction. On the General Settings tab, an Under Construction checkbox has been added to this tab. Select the asset type. Depreciable must be selected in order to select under construction. And just a note that this label has had a name change. It used to be called Depreciate and it's now called Depreciable. Under construction defaults to false. You'd set this to true. Enter the useful life of the asset class, and that will default through to the asset when you create it. Enter any other fields and save the record. And as soon as any assets exist for this class, that checkbox for under construction is set to read only. You would also check your depreciation settings and assign your GL accounts. On the fixed asset screen, when you create your under construction asset, you'll select the appropriate asset class, which will be the construction class. Enter the receipt date as the date you're starting construction of the new asset. The placed in service date is optional because assets under construction do not get depreciated. But where a date is entered, a warning will display that the asset will not be depreciated. So that can be edited and cleared while associated with an under construction class. Where the placed in date has been cleared, the asset can be transferred to another under construction class provided no depreciation transactions exist. The original acquisition cost is just an estimate of what this new asset is going to cost to construct. So let's have a look in the demo system on fixed assets under construction. Firstly, I create a new asset and I assign it to my under construction asset class. So it is the asset class that determines the type of asset. Entering a quantity of 1. The useful life has defaulted from the asset class. And I'll put a receipt date of 1st of April. So that's the date the asset starts construction. Placed in service date, I'm going to leave empty as this is not required until such time the asset's completed and assigned to a depreciable class. I'll enter an estimated acquisition cost of $15,000, assign a branch and assign a department. Everything that has an asterisk against it is a mandatory field and must be completed. Depreciation settings and the GL accounts are defaulted through from the asset class, so if you need to make any changes, do so now, and then you can save. So let's have a look at the asset class. If I take my asset off hold and we look at the list of actions, you can see I can do most things except for calculate depreciation. If we go to the calculate depreciation screen, you can see that the under construction asset class is not visible in the asset class drop list, and that's because records related to fixed assets under construction are excluded from selection for calculation of depreciation because they're not yet in service. Once construction is completed, the asset will need to be transferred to a fixed assets class other than those used for under construction, be assigned a placed in service date, and then start being depreciated. So if we go back to our Calculate Depreciation screen, we can now see that the asset is showing as listed for depreciation to be calculated. And just a note, where depreciation transactions exist, you cannot change the asset class to one that has under construction selected, or transfer the asset to a class that has under construction selected. So no depreciation transactions can exist for an asset to be deemed under construction. Finance screens that used automation steps have been redesigned to support the new workflow engine. Processes relating to finance functionality work as previously. So just the UI comparisons here. The user interface has been enhanced to support the functionality of the new workflow engine. This includes renaming of some of the actions and adding to or removing from actions listed. Action names have been unified throughout the system. So put on credit hold is now just credit hold, and release from credit hold is remove credit hold. Email and print actions have been relabeled to their shortened form, etc. On multiple screens for the Finance module, the buttons representing actions most relevant to the current status of the document opened on the screen now display directly in the toolbar. So you can see this one here, we've got Pay in the top area. The order of the action menu commands have also been rearranged. Commands relating to the document workflow are located at the top of the menu, while others have been moved to the bottom. And the Hold checkbox has been replaced by the Hold and Remove Hold actions on the toolbar. So that's some of the changes here. Just an important note, a list of screens that contain these UI enhancements are contained under the topic area in the release notes. The implementation of the new workflow engine entailed changes to DAX and business logic, which may affect some custom generic inquiries, customization projects, import and export scenarios, and API integrations. The complete list of changes are in the release notes for developers, and further detail on creating workflows are contained in the MYOB Advanced Customization Guide. And a video was also released in the 2020.6 that illustrates how to use the workflow engine. Support for cash transactions and bank deposits. Users can now add cash transactions to a bank deposit along with customer payments. Changes to the transactions screen. On the cash account field, there's a clearing account column added to the lookup table. On the Financial Details tab, a Payment Information section has been added to the form, and the fields relate to the bank deposit. And when selecting to add payment or add payment to deposit on the bank deposit screen, a window displays showing cash transactions and customer payments that can be added to a bank deposit. So for a disbursement entry, this creates a credit entry for the clearing account and a debit negative entry to the deposit, and a receipt entry does the reverse. It creates a debit entry for the clearing account and a credit positive entry to the deposit batch. A new tax calculation mode setting has been added to the sales prices and sales price worksheet screens to support price lists for net gross prices. In MYOB Advanced, users can define gross and net prices based on a customs price class. However, in previous versions it was not obvious from a price list whether a price was gross or net. As of this release, a new setting, Tax Calculation Mode, has been added to the sales prices and the sales price worksheet screens. Users can now create a sales document with the gross tax calculation mode and specify gross prices, or create a sales document with the net tax calculation mode and specify net prices for it. This functionality is available if the net gross entry mode feature is enabled on the Enable Disable Features screen. Some UI changes to accommodate for this. On the Sales Prices screen, Summary area, the Tax Calculation Mode field has been added. Options for all modes, gross, net and not set, allow you to filter the price lists on the table. On the table, a Tax Calculation Mode and Tax Category columns have been added. The Tax Category column is read-only. This displays from the stock item or non-stock item's general setting for the item. In a UI change, the effective as of date, the field displays the current business date by default. The Create Price Worksheet action copies values selected in the tax calculation mode field to the created worksheet. This cannot be set to all modes. It's either not set, which is either tax inclusive or exclusive depending on the tax setting, gross, which is tax inclusive, or net, which is tax exclusive. Changes to the sale price worksheet screen. On the summary area, a tax calculation mode field has been added. There's been a UI change. The copy prices action copies only the prices that have a tax calculation mode selected in the worksheet. And on the table, the tax category column has been added. For the price selection rules, where the net gross entry mode is enabled, the system selects only prices that meet the tax calculation mode criteria. So there are multiple other improvements that have been made to the UI and financial management processes. Where a user-defined change has been made to the financial calendar, there is now an action on the tax period screen to synchronise periods with GL. This means the tax periods can be synchronised with financial periods in the company calendar, regardless of the tax period status. Users can now add tax to each expense line on the funds transfer screen. A change has been made to the Prepare Payment screen so that you can filter based on a supplier class field. Just a note though, the implementation of this functionality may affect custom generic inquiries, customization projects, import and export scenarios and API integrations, so you should refer to the MYOB Advanced 2021.1.1 Technical Release Notes for full details. A Change ID command has been added to the Ledgers screen. A change has been made to the Recalculate Account History screen, providing an option to recalculate history for statistical ledgers based on transactions post to the ledgers. There's been a UI change with regards to renaming of multiple fields, replacing the word validate for the word recalculate or process all. The statement cycle field has been moved to the top of the Calculate Overdue Charges screen to prevent the overdue charge date field from being reset when accounts receivable preferences for the general setting Set Default Overdue Charges by Statement Cycle is selected. Both the AR Open Documents by Project and by Customer Reports have been redesigned to display information as at the current business date and show amounts paid or applied. These reports are available in the Project Management and Construction workspace, as well as the Receivables workspace. And that brings me to the end of this 2021.1.1 Finance webinar. For any questions or feedback relating to this webinar, please email proserve.ed@myob.com. Thank you.